Miriam Meets on RTE Radio 1 with Miriam O'Callaghan.
The late Barney McKenna was one of the founding members of the Dubliners, a band formed 50 years ago this year. Legend is a word that's sometimes overused, but in Barney's case, it's the only word to describe a man who made such a contribution to Irish music over the past half-century. Barney was laid to rest this week, mourned by his partner Tina, his family, his friends and his many, many fans. To mark his life and with their blessing, we're bringing you a chance to listen again to a programme first broadcast in November 2009, when I met Barney in the company of John Sheahan, another long-time member of the Dubliners. Both men had turned 70 that year, a significant landmark birthday. We had a great chat that morning, and I began by asking Barney about how long he'd known John Sheahan and hadn't they grown up near each other.
That's right. John was down in Marino and I was up the road in Donecarney North, just up the Malahide Road, about a mile and a half from where John was brought up.
And did you know each other growing up?
Just in our, some of it in our teenagers, through the music. We used to meet in the Piper's Club, John, wasn't it?
Piper's Club and the Fiddler's Club in Church Street. We knew each other at a kind of a slight distance, but knew we played tunes together and met occasionally at places like that.
And the Piper's was on Saturday night, and then there was another group called the Fiddler's Club in Church Street. That was Wednesdays. And John used to pass me on the bike, didn't you?
Well, I must say, Barney was a most dedicated musician. In those days, Miriam, before tape recorders were common, you know, you'd meet an old musician and maybe learn the first half of a tune this week, and you'd have to come back the following week to learn the second half of the tune, maybe. But I remember I was very posh. I had a bicycle to get home with myself and the fiddle. But I remember passing Barney somewhere around Marino Green in the early hours of the morning, trudging away with the old banjo all the way from Church Street up to Donecarney.
Thomas Street.
Or Thomas Street, well.
Yeah. On the Sunday morning, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I was born down to the end of Mead Street.
Right.
In the old Coombe. My father was a County Mead man. My mother, County Dublin at the time. And we lived outside the Coombe, and then I spent a lot of my childhood in County Mead. From Mead Street to County Mead around Kildalkey Road, where I learned the music. Outside Trim.
And you were one of 7, were you?
Originally there was, yeah. 2 boys died, twins, and then and 2 girls after. So there's just 3 of us left.
Okay, so, and in fact, some of the children died when they were quite young, Barney, did they?
They were, yeah, they were only infants. My father used to play the small squeeze box, the melodeon, and his uncle, the contrary one, Uncle Jim, he was a very good mandolin player. So we nicknamed him the Bundle of Fun. He played the mandolin. Then there was Uncle Barney, Aunt Maggie, and Uncle Paddy. And
so there was loads of music in
the family and the grandmother.
And yourself, John, was there music in your family?
Yeah, I grew up in Marino, as Barney mentioned there. And my mother and father were musical. They didn't play any instruments as such. But I did hear rumours that my father used to play the concertina years before that. And my mother could scrape out a bit of a tune on the fiddle. But my first kind of musical influence, I suppose, was the Christian Brothers School in Marino. There was a Brother McCaffrey there, and he used to teach us, you know, we had him for weekly singing lessons, and we learned the tonic solf and the whole lot there. And he brought in the tin whistle one day and played a tune for us, and we were all mesmerised by this little instrument. And he said, would anybody like to learn? Of course, sir, all the hands went up, about 40 of them. And he said, well, I'll have to ask the principal now. Things were fairly strict. It wasn't on the official curriculum. So he came back the next day and said, well, I asked the principal, and he said it's okay for any of the boys that are willing to stay back after school. So there's a nice way of weeding it down to about 9 or 10, you know.
Yeah.
Paddy Maloney was in the same class, by the way. Paddy Maloney of the Chieftains, yeah.
That's amazing.
We went to school together, and there was some of the Rowsums, Leo Rowsum's sons, Liam and Leon.
And the Riley brothers.
And the Rileys, that's right. Barney would have known a lot of them too, yeah.
All from Donecarney, by the way.
Donecarney, great place.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And just before I get to how you met and ended up in the Dubliners, you're both 70 this year, aren't you?
That's right, I was
He's
17
gone,
in May.
6 months older.
Oh, yeah.
He's a lot older, isn't he?
He's 70, yeah.
I was 70 in May. Barney's birthday is coming up in December.
And you were born, weren't you, Barney, on Beethoven's birthday? You're very happy about that.
16th of December.
Yeah.
Not the same year, but the same one of the dates, yeah.
But
16.
you, Barney, didn't you, just to explain, you had a stroke about 9 years ago, didn't you? I mean, you've recovered...
It was about 8 years ago, yeah. 8 or 9. I had a stroke. And, I'm just coming about now.
Yeah. No,
I'm
you're
able to
virtually
play
there.
again. Yeah, about 97%. Would that be right, John?
Yeah, I remember going in to visit Barney in the Mater Private at the time, the Mater Hospital, and they had various little items to exercise the fingers and that, these little rubber squeegee things. But Barney discovered his own perfect therapy. He had somebody bring him in the banjo. So he's playing the banjo every day, and sure, it was like a concert every day. All the nurses used to be flocking into Barney's ward to hear this impromptu session on the banjo.
But I wasn't able to play that.
Barney's therapy, you were playing fine. They were all delighted anyway.
But you've never lost your voice, Barney, because
Well, I never sang with the group.
I know, but you were
you
singing
did.
for me earlier, and I'm going to ask you to sing
a
that
little
song.
bit. I was never that because you had great singers in the group. I was the instrumentalist.
But you
And
sing
John,
now, don't you, when you go
I used to
around?
sing a little bit. Yeah, I could a small bit. Yeah,
That song, Don't You Love It, I Wish I Had Someone to Love Me. Didn't your grandmother sing that to you?
as a lullaby. Yeah, for on a little babby out on the Kildalkey Road.
And you
County
sing that a
Meath.
bit. Listen, on this Sunday morning, I'd like to ask you to sing that now. You have your fiddle there, haven't you, John?
I have my fiddle here, Miriam. Well, I'll give him a little intro, maybe, just
Yeah.
to get the pitch.
A bit early, isn't it?
Who cares? Just go for it.
It's in B flat, I think. But sure, you won't know that. The signature will be
Give
in...
me a beer and flatten myself.
Yeah, here we go.
Well, I wish I had someone to love me, someone to call me her own, someone to sleep with me nightly. I'm weary of sleeping alone. Meet me this evening by moonlight. Meet me tonight all alone. I have a sad story to tell you. I'm telling it under the moon. Well, I wish I had someone to love me, someone to call me her own, someone to sleep with me nightly. I'm weary of sleeping alone. I'm weary of sleeping alone.
Fantastic. Thanks both for doing that so early in the morning.
There you are.
You do that a
no
lot.
props or no amplifiers or gadgets.
And you do that on tour at the moment, don't you? Because you're both still touring.
That's right,
with
yeah.
the Dubliners.
Actually, we did it just last week in the Opera House in Frankfurt, about 2,500 people. And they all singing that chorus along with Barney. It's just a magical moment in the show.
Where did you both end up joining the Dubliners? Like, were you both in O'Donoghue's at the same time? How did that happen?
Well, to be truthful now, I'm a latecomer. The group is 47 years in existence this year, but I'm only with the group about 45 and a half years. Because
You're a blow-in.
The original, I'm a blow-in. The original group was Barney, Ronnie, Kieran and Luke. So I think Barney is probably best able to paint the original picture.
Well, yeah, Ronnie, we'd heard of each other. Ronnie came back from Spain because he'd been to Spain for 3 or 4 years, and he was doing a little bit of singing here and there in Dublin, around, and he was doing a little bit of theatrical stuff with John Malloy on the little gate, the gate here,
Yeah.
Parnell Square. At the time, I was doing a little gig here and there on the tenor banjo, because it was very unusual to anybody playing solo, or playing traditional Irish music on the banjo, you see. Lord bless him, Brendan O'Doul, he gave me a little gig, brought me down to Wexford and played. Well, I'll tell you a little story about
About your mother?
Yeah.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, go on.
He called Brandon, called up to the house in Donecarney. And my mother was a gents tailoress. She had a lovely suit on me. So I was ready, and Dickie Bow, hold on, no beard. I hadn't had a beard at the time. And Brendan called up to the house, and he had the new Volkswagen Beetle, and of course that was like a Rolls Royce at the time. And he said, I wonder, would Bernard, I'm glad you called him Bernard. He said, that's my Bernard, I called him Barney, you know. But that's my Bernard, you see.
This is your mother.
Yeah. And we're playing down the way. I said, oh, thanks for the God. And well, we're playing, there was some festival on. Anyway, she said, I'm glad. And will you do me a favour? And, what's that, Mrs. McKenna? Will you keep me away from them beatniks she's going round with? Do you see?
The beatniks being Luke and Kieran and Ronnie.
With the beards.
Wow.
He's going round with these lads now. I don't know what is right way to go and all that, you know. Because at that time, you could wear a beard if you were elderly. Yeah. But it wasn't really accepted amongst young people, you know. And of course, we're all young that time.
And was it in O'Donoghue's Barney that finally you all kind of got together? It was in O'Donoghu's.
Yeah, it was. Like, a lot of people asked this beard trick. Well, what's the odd thing about the beards? Did you all get around the big table and, you know, was it...
Have a meeting, a board meeting.
Yeah, a beard meeting.
A board meeting. That's very good, a beard meeting.
A board meeting, yeah.
A beard meeting around the board. But anyway... Anyway, no, it didn't happen that way. It was all purely... Would it be accidental or incidental? I don't know which word.
It was like an organic growth, I suppose.
Yeah, Anyway...
But originally it was really you and Ronnie started doing gigs together, wasn't it?
Yeah, we got a couple of gigs here and there, and I could play the mandolin as well.
And John,
Mm.
you gave up your sensible...
I think you were waiting there, Miriam, for Luke and Kieran to enter the picture, but I'm still waiting myself.
But listen, you actually gave up a sensible job, John, didn't you, in the ESB?
I did.
And then you nearly had a heart attack, didn't you? Because they kind of had a row and broke up as you joined.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it. It was 1965. I had been doing the occasional gigs with the lads, but I was still working in the ESB in the daytime as a draftsman. I had served my time previously to the electrical trade, you see. And it came to the stage where most of my annual leave was used up and I was beginning to eat into sick leave, you see. And we were playing up in...
and you were falling asleep some days.
I was falling asleep after coming home late the night before.
Back at 4 and up at 7 or 8.
That kind of thing, yeah. But there was this night we were playing in the Ulster Hall in Belfast. And there was a big write-up in the Irish Times about it the next day. But I wasn't expecting this, and I got my brother to ring up and say John is sick. But so I came in the next day and said, how sick were you? Like we read about this great concert you gave with the lads up in the Ulster Hall. So that was a kind of a signal that's time to think about this seriously. So I eventually gave up my good pensionable job in 1965, and I met up with the lads, and we were going to have a serious discussion about the future and make plans and all that kind of thing. Yes. So we met in Donia Nesbitt's, and there was a good few pints. There was no minutes for the meeting or anything like this. We had a good few pints, and somebody kicked somebody else under the table accidentally on the shin.
No, Ronnie gave me a little...
an accidental kick.
Yeah. Accidental on purpose.
So eventually there was pints spilt and tables overturned, and it was, well, to hell with you and to hell with you, and this is the end of the group. So I was driving home. I said, what am I after doing? My good pensionable job is gone. I've given in my notice today. The group I came to join is broken up. The next day I had a ring from Ronnie, and he says, John, are you okay for Friday? There's a gig down in Thurles. And I said, but Ronnie, I thought the group broke up last night. He said, I don't take any notice of that. That happens every week. So after that I felt kind of reassured that this is likely to last. And people were saying, at the time, I'll give it 2 or 3 years and sure you can always get your job back. And that was 65. How long ago was that?
A good few years ago. It's like 7 Drunken Nights was a big moment for the Dubliners. We're going to take that bit of music. Now, actually, I think we'll take the piece of music and then you can tell me about it, okay? Mm-hmm. So let's listen now to 7 Drunken Nights.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked to sing a song which has 7 verses, but we're only allowed to sing 5 of them. Oh, as I was home on a Monday night, as drunk could be, I saw a horse outside the door where my old horse should be. Well, I called me wife and I said to her, will you kindly tell to me who owns that horse outside the door where my owl horse should be? Yet you drunk, you silly old fool, and still you cannot see.
7 drunken nights there. Of course, there's only 5 drunken nights there, weren't there, Barney?
And that one on the English
Version.
the English version of it, yeah.
Is that the one you sang on Top of the Pops?
No, that's the one that Ronnie sang. We only sang the 5 versions of them, and they were harmless, but they got banned.
They got banned
Banned
here,
and
didn't they?
banned. And read off the altar down in
That was another thing, but Joe O'Haney.
yeah, Joe Heaney.
Joe Heaney.
Yeah.
Joe Heaney, yeah. Joe Heaney.
And that's where we learnt it from, a most unlikely source for a song to end up on Top of the Pops afterwards, you know.
Was it kind of a big moment for you as a group, or was it a
I think
stressful moment?
commercially it was, because up to then we'd been playing in small clubs and little concert halls, and after that was blasted off the air on Radio Caroline at the time, the popularity kind of escalated overnight, and we were suddenly playing the Albert Hall and places like that, you know. So it made a huge difference commercially, but we kind of took it in our stride, you know. People were saying, oh, wonderful, you're in on Top of the Pops, and Ronnie was kind of saying, is that a good thing or a bad thing, you know. We didn't take it too seriously.
And actually, since you were talking, and Ronnie obviously was just singing there, you write poetry now, John, and you have a poem there, don't you?
I
To
do,
Ronnie,
yeah.
for Ronnie. Do you want to say about it?
The poetry is a kind of a late vocation. I only started a few years ago, but the day after Ronnie's funeral last year, I woke up thinking about him, naturally enough, as we all were, I suppose. And I wondered in a quizzical kind of a way, what kind of a heaven is Ronnie in now? And whether this heaven would meet with his expectations, because he could be quite grumpy at times. Contrary, he wouldn't be that easy to please. So I wrote this little humorous poem. Kavanagh refers to Patrick Kavanagh, of course. Himself and Ronnie were very good pals. And another poet who's mentioned here is Joe O'Brien. He was also a good poet, a character who was knocking around in the 60s, but he never kind of got the recognition that he thought he deserved himself, if you know what I mean. But Cleena and Phelim, Ronnie's daughter and son, they actually used one of Joe O'Brien's poems at the end of Ronnie's funeral mass, and finally Deirdre, as Ronnie's wife, who sadly died a little over a year before him. But it's not too serious. I'll give it to you anyway, sure. Ronnie's heaven. What's it like, Ronnie, your new life? Is it the way the old masters painted it? Floating on a damp cloud in the company of winged creatures, listening to non-stop harp music. I could paint you in, but not your expectations. Would somebody, for Christ's sake, get me down from here and show me the fountain of champagne? I thought this was meant to be a celebration. I'll paint a different picture instead. I see your spirit freed at last from earthly shackles, soaring to a new consciousness, communicating with Kavanagh without the encumbrance of words, without the embarrassment of being barred from 4 Bagot Street pubs. All is clear now. Ulysses simpler than the Lord's Prayer. Beckett no longer waiting for Godot, and Joe O'Brien sidling over with an impish grin. How are you, Ronnie? You brought me fame at last. I heard Cleena and Phelim pick me poem for the end of your mass. But you needn't have hurried. There's no closing time up here. Just one continuous holy hour. Now Deirdre comes into focus, bridging and healing a painful absence. Unhindered by bodies, your spirits embrace and entwine in a never-ending spiral of joy, leaving behind the 3 great imponderables that tortured you. What is life? What is art? And where the fuck is Barney?
Do you miss him?
We do, of course, yeah. We missed them all. I mean, when you're together with a group of musicians like that, it becomes like an extended family, you know.
Did you fight a lot or not between yourselves?
Not a lot, but occasionally, yeah. Occasionally there'd be rows about different things, usually about where the next drink was coming from or something like that. But no, there was never any serious falling out as such, but there'd be words used and names called and that kind of thing, but that'd be natural enough.
And Kavanagh, you mentioned him there, he did an interview, didn't he, with Ronnie once?
Oh, he did. He interviewed Ronnie for I think it was known as the RTV guide
yeah.
at the time. He did an interview with Ronnie, and during the course of the interview, Ronnie said that, he was really more of a storyteller than a singer. He didn't have that much of a voice, and with regard to playing the guitar, he could just enough to accompany a song. So apparently Patrick Kavanagh was very honest, and in his story in the RTV Guide, he said Ronnie Drew was fooling the people. By his own admission, he could neither sing nor play the guitar. But they were good pals. The two of them met one day on Baggot Street Bridge, and there was 4 pubs in the vicinity. I mentioned it in the poem there. There was Mooney's and the Crooked Bobby and Searson's and
the Waterloo
House. So Patrick said, "How are you, Ronnie? Would you like a drink?" And Ronnie said, "Yeah, we go into Mooney's." And Kavanagh said, "I can't go into Mooney's, I'm barred from there. What about the Crooked Bobby?" And Ronnie said, "I can't go there, I'm barred from there. What about Searson's?" And Kavanagh said, "I'm barred from Searson's. What about the Waterloo House?" Ronnie said, "I'm barred from the Waterloo House." "Oh, good luck, so Ronnie, see you again." And off he sauntered, and that was the end of it.
There was a lot of drinking, though, wasn't there? I mean, this isn't to make a serious moral point. But do you think there was too much drinking, Barney? Was there too much drink involved?
At times, but we never, I don't think we ever lost a gig over it. It was part of the image, I suppose, at the time. And there was no drugs at the time. There was no, there wasn't even, there was not even the marijuana or the light stuff, as they called it. You never heard of it at the time.
But do you think it would have taken a toll on your health? I'm wondering, maybe not. I mean, I'm just wondering on all of you. Yeah,
it did.
I'm sure it did, yeah.
It did. It took toll. I mean, you had to, I think with poor Luke, I don't think Luke had enough. The secret to drinking is to eat, really. You have to have the dry filling, as they call it.
But Kieran had a lovely kind of an attitude to drink. He didn't drink to get drunk as such. I can remember in our early days touring around Europe, he'd be on the lookout for drinks he hadn't seen before, unfamiliar drinks like schnapses and liqueurs. And I was, he'd pour out the drink and hold it up to the light and admire the light filtering through the different colours, I was with him in a pub in France one night. We had a night off, and I said, "Kieran, what would you fancy to drink?" And he eyed this line of coloured liqueurs across the top shelf, and he says to me, "I think we'll start over on the left-hand side."
They were mad days, of course. But John, you didn't drink till you were about 29, did you?
I was a late starter, Miriam, yeah. I used to drink gallons of Coca-Cola at the time, but eventually I joined the gang and I started drinking the odd glass of wine. But I kept it in moderation, and I still take a few glasses of wine with a meal, and I enjoy it.
I started to smoke at 35.
And I can remember more than they can.
Which is good.
On average.
We're going to take another piece of music now. It's kind of a duet between the two of you, fiddle and banjo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is from our 25-year album, actually. It's a set of reels, Cooley's Reel, The Dawn and the Mullingar Races.
OK, let's have a listen to that now.
Yeah.
Was John Sheahan and the late Barney McKenna playing a set of reels 25 years ago. The original lineup of the Dubliners included Luke Kelly, Ronnie Drew and Kieran Burke, all of whom had died by the time of our interview. I asked John about the deaths of Luke and Kieran.
Well, I suppose when you're together that long, singing and living out of each other's pockets for years, it becomes like an extended family, really. And when somebody dies like that, it's like losing a member of a family. It's like losing a brother, really, And that was the case in all three situations with Kieran and Luke and then Ronnie.
Yeah. And this might sound a bit odd, but I suppose Luke and Ronnie were so well known. Did you ever both mind? Were you ever jealous that those two, in a sense, maybe got more well known, were bigger stars with the public than you, or did you never think like that?
No, I don't think it ever bothered us. It was obvious all right, I think, that
Yeah, very
Ronnie
strong.
and Luke had such strong personalities and unique voices that...
See, and Luke was great with the industrial ballads and
Ronnie with the
folk
Dublin
song,
sounds.
Ronnie with the Dublin sound, and Kieran was an excellent speaker of the Irish language. And a great Irish, he used to sing the Gaelic songs. It was so unique. You had John and myself doing the instrumental music, and then you had Kieran on the Irish, Luke, and the ballads, and Ronnie.
I mean, did you tend to naturally pair off? You know the way in a family sometimes two brothers
Yes.
are closer. Like, would you two have been...
Well, the
close?
amazing that's a very interesting question. When we're on tour, we tended to pair off, but not always the same pair every day. I could be Ronnie's pal for a couple of days and we go off to Spanish restaurants and that kind of thing in London. The next day I could be with Barney going off to traditional sessions. I could be with Kieran another day. And these relationships kept crossing over each other, and I think that was a very good thing in a way, you know. There was no cliques formed as such, you know.
I never socialised that when we're not on stage.
You never socialised together?
No, because we've found out with a lot of groups that don't last so long. They meet up too often when they're not
on tour.
And then you get the personality clashes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And
So maybe
that's-
that's a secret.
We could
well,
be
we
free. Yeah, we could be free for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and there'd be no contact at all until the next
a
tour.
couple of months.
And when we'd meet at the airport, there was a whole freshness to the relationship and the interrelationship.
Now, if we met, that was different. You know?
Oh yeah, it
I mean,
Yeah.
happened to meet and have
and
a
maybe
bit
there
of
was
crack.
an odd party or something, we might. But we
Yeah.
wouldn't be saying, listen, I'll see you now next such a place.
But you're still going strong. I mean, even though... Did you ever think maybe just let it go? How do you keep going, or why do you keep going?
Well, I actually asked Barney that question a couple of years ago. I said, Barney, now we're 45 years going now. How long more do you want to keep going? And Barney says to me, too late to stop now. So the most positive thing we could say is that we've no plans to stop.
And do you still enjoy it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Do you, Barney? Do you still enjoy
I
it?
do, yeah.
I think music is one of these things you can't fake it really. If you stop enjoying it, then it's time to pack it up. You know.
If you're playing well and you feel good about the thing, it's great.
Yeah.
You know.
And we still do.
And you
Thanks
love
to
his
God.
Barneyisms, don't you? You really want to talk about these Barneyisms
I know.
before we end. Tell me about
I know.
it.
Well, Barney won't mind me saying that he has a unique way of abusing the English language in a very artistic, beautiful way. And the only way to describe that, I suppose, is to give you a couple of examples. Last year, or it might have been the year before, we did a spate of charity gigs, group-wise and individually. And we were doing a gig this night anyway in the concert hall, and Seamus Hosey was introducing us. As a matter of fact, it was a John B. Keane commemoration gig, and there was 3 of us on, Michael Howard, Barney, myself, and Seamus introduced us, big round of applause, and Barney wasn't sure whether this gig was a paying one or not, the financial status of the gig as such. And on the way over to the microphone, Barney leans to me and said, by the way, John, is this another charity gig or is it feasible? No, that's a typical Barneyism. Another time in the concert hall, we had a guest with us, Nigel Warren-Green, a brilliant cellist, and I was introducing a piece that I'd written called The Prodigal Son, and I said Nigel is going to add a nice classical touch with the cello. And Barney, who wasn't meant to be involved in the arrangement at all, had a mandolin in his hand. He pulls the mandolin and his chair over to the mic, said, I classified with the mandolin. Another one came into my head. We were on a flight to London in the late 60s. And it was in those days when there was 3 seats opposite 3. Do you remember that old configuration and a table between? There was Barney, Ronnie and myself on one side, and who sat down on the opposite side? Only Dr. Sims, the Protestant Archbishop of Dublin. And Ronnie recognised him, of course, from his photographs in the Irish Times and that. He said, good morning, Doctor. But Barney didn't take any heed of this, and Barney was telling him yarns. He said, well, I'll tell you this one, Father. And Father here and Father there. So Dr. Sims went out to the toilet anyway, and Ronnie leans over and said, Barney, you should address him as Doctor. He's Dr. Sims, the Protestant Archbishop of Dublin. So anyway, when Barney took this on board, and when Dr. Sims came back and sat down, Barney leans over and she shakes hands with him and said, by the way, Doctor, I'm sorry for calling you Father. I thought you were a priest. Remember that?
Yeah.
Do you still enjoy it as much, Barney? Do you have any regrets going back? Would you have drunk less? Would you have done anything differently in your life or with the band?
I think I would have not taken so much drink. But I wasn't drinking like every night, if you know what I mean. But sometimes I used to drink too much Guinness. I never drank anything else. And not a drop of wine, but that was all. You never on the spirits.
And you've very poor sight, haven't you, Barney?
Well, I always had.
Yeah.
My sight from a very early age was, would you say, impaired.
Yeah. But it doesn't stop you getting around.
No, I can still see, well, a little bit. I got the belated diabetes, and I lost the right eye.
Do you enjoy life as much as you always did?
Well, I'd like to stop when I was about 50, just for 4 or 5 years, and then go back, but John wouldn't stop.
He's blaming me now.
Yeah, it's
I
his
know
fault.
that.
You know, I mean, when you're around 50, you're still relatively young.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, okay, we're 70 now. Like, what do you do when you're
Sure,
70?
what else would you have done if you stopped?
That's right, I don't want to.
Full-time fishing, maybe?
Yeah.
He can dream. You, John, you write poetry now, music a lot, don't you?
I do, yeah. Well, I was always dabbling at old tunes, composing pieces of music, but the poetry is a kind of a late vocation.
And there's one poem in particular you're going to...
Yeah, I have a little piece here which are called Signatures, and I was thinking one day about the fact that we all like to leave some sort of a mark after us, you know, whether it's a sculptor leaves his mark on stone or an artist on paint or whatever. And I was thinking about what mark I might leave myself. And I give it to you, a little piece called Signatures. The ploughman leaves his trace on field and furrow. The sculptor's mark is etched in chiselled stone. With sheaves of gold, the thatcher's name is written. In rings of clay, the potter's name is known. When day is done and evening firelight beckons, when tradesmen all are free from toil and care, I linger in the shadows with my fiddle and softly leave my signature in air.
That's really lovely.
Mm.
Do you like his poetry, Barney?
I do. I'm thinking, you know, when you're a child, you'd be signing things in the air. That's why I always try and get people, if music is good, to listen to it, because it's an art of the present. And you see, tomorrow, the present will be history. And we can't learn anything only from what we're saying now, which is present. But tomorrow and this evening, this will be history. So really, you can only learn from history when you think of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Music, I think, we often spoke about this, Barney. Music is this transient kind of a thing. You do a concert and you make sounds, and the sounds are left hanging in the air and then disappeared. But people's minds and hearts are changed. They go home different people from the people that arrived to begin with, you know. It's one of these magical, spiritual kind of communications, I think.
It's true, it's an art of the present. But you can't, like, you can still go to the museum. The poorest person can go to a museum and you can look at Rembrandt or Van Gogh.
And enjoy.
And enjoy it. But you can't do it with music. You have to enjoy it and try and listen. Okay, you make recordings and you can hear it on the tapes. But it's not quite the same as...
it's when to be there when it's happening. It's something special, I think, yeah.
And we're going to end up this morning on a piece of music you've written recently, aren't we, John?
Yeah, actually, it's a while ago, Miriam, but I came across this recording recently. It's a piece I wrote called Autumn in Paris, a romantic kind of a waltz feeling to it. And it was used about 22 years ago on Music for Middlebrows in here, Des Keogh's programme. And a short while after I heard the orchestration, which was done by Johnny Devlin, one of the old-timers in the music business. He just died there recently. He came from the big band era, and he was just a wonderful arranger, and the beauty that he took out of a simple tune. I was just enthralled by the whole thing. And I got an orchestra together in the studio one day and recorded it, and I was just totally enthralled by the finished result. I was going home saying, did I really write this piece of music, you know? But it was the wonderful arrangement and the counterpoints and little bits of harmony that he put in, which is another talent in its own right altogether, you know.
Okay, well,
Autumn
look,
in Paris.
We're going to listen to that now, Autumn in Paris. And that was my conversation with the late Barney McKenna and his fellow Dubliner John Sheahan. Our thoughts are with Barney's partner Tina, his family and his many friends. Barney, as well as being a gentleman, was a virtuoso musician, and although his banjo was at the heart of the Dubliners' sound, it was rare enough that he got to take centre stage. So as our tribute to him, here is the late Barney with the Dubliners playing the traditional air, The Mason's Apron, arranged for fiddle and his beloved banjo.
Miriam meets on RTE Radio 1 with Miriam O'Callaghan. Miriam meets on RTE Radio 1 with Miriam O'Callaghan.
The late Barney McKenna was one of the founding members of the Dubliners, a band formed 50 years ago this year. Legend is a word that's sometimes overused, but in Barney's case, it's the only word to describe a man who made such a contribution to Irish music over the past half-century. Barney was laid to rest this week, mourned by his partner Tina, his family, his friends and his many, many fans. To mark his life and with their blessing, we're bringing you a chance to listen again to a programme first broadcast in November 2009, when I met Barney in the company of John Sheahan, another long-time member of the Dubliners. Both men had turned 70 that year, a significant landmark birthday. We had a great chat that morning and I began by asking Barney about how long he'd known John Sheahan and hadn't they grown up near each other.
That's right. John was down in Marino and I was up the road in Donecarney North, just up the Malahide Road, about a mile and a half from where John was brought up.
And did you know each other growing up?
Just in our, some of it in our teenagers, through the music. We used to meet in the Piper's Club, John, wasn't it?
Piper's Club and the Fiddlers Club in Church Street. We knew each other at a kind of a slight distance, but played tunes together and met occasionally at places like that.
And the Piper's was on Saturday night, so we nicknamed him the Bundle of Fun. He played the mandolin. Then there was Uncle Barney, Aunt Maggie and Uncle Paddy.
So there was loads of music in
the family and the grandmother.
And yourself, John, was there music in your family?
Yeah, I grew up in Marino, as Barney mentioned there. And my mother and father were musical. They didn't play any instruments as such, but I did hear rumours that my father used to play the concertina years before that. And my mother could scrape out a bit of a tune on the fiddle. But my first kind of musical influence, I suppose, was the Christian Brothers School in Marino. There was a Brother McCaffrey there, and he used to teach us, we had him for weekly singing lessons, and we learned the tonic solf and the whole lot there. And he brought in the tin whistle one day and played a tune for us, and we were all mesmerised by this little instrument. And he said, would anybody like to learn? Of course, sir, all the hands went up, about 40 of them. And he said, well, I'll have to ask the principal now. Things were fairly strict. It wasn't on the official curriculum, so he came back the next day and said, well, I asked the principal and he said it's okay for any of the boys that are willing to stay back after school. So there's a nice way of weeding it down to about 9 or 10,
Yeah.
Paddy Maloney was in the same class, by the way. Paddy Maloney of the Chieftains, yeah.
That's amazing.
We went to school together and there was some of the Rowsums, Leo Rowsum's sons, Liam and Leon.
And then there was another group called the Fiddlers Club in Church Street. That was Wednesdays. And John used to pass me on the bike, didn't you?
Well, I must say, Barney was a most dedicated musician. In those days, Miriam, before tape recorders were common, you you'd meet an old musician and maybe learn the first half of a tune this week, and you'd have to come back the following week to learn the second half of the tune maybe. But I remember I was very posh. I had a bicycle to get home with myself and the fiddle, but I remember passing Barney somewhere around Marino Green in the early hours of the morning. You're trudging away with the old banjo all the way from Church Street up to Donnycarney.
Thomas Street.
Or Thomas Street, well.
And the Sunday morning, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I was born down to the end of Mead Street.
Right.
In the old Coombe. My father was a County Meath man. My mother County Dublin at the time. And we lived outside the Coombe, and then I spent a lot of my childhood in County Meath. From Mead Street to County Meath around Kildare Road, where I learned the music, outside Trim.
And you were one of 7, were you?
Originally there was, yeah. 2 boys died, twins, and then and 2 girls after. So there's just 3 of us left.
Okay, so, and in fact, some of the children died when they were quite young, Barney, did they?
They were, yeah, they were only infants. My father used to play the small squeeze box, the melodeon, and his uncle, the contrary one, Uncle Jim. He's a very good mandolin player. And the Riley brothers.
And the Rileys, that's right. Barney would have known a lot of them too, yeah.
All from Donnycarney, by the way.
Donnycarney, great place.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And just before I get to how you met and ended up in the Dubliners, you're both 70 this year, aren't you?
That's right, I was
He's
17
gone,
in May.
he's...
6 months older.
Oh, yeah.
He's a lot older, isn't he?
He's 7 yeah.
I was 70 in May. Barney's birthday is coming up in December.
And you were
Right,
born, weren't you, Barney, on Beethoven's birthday? You're very happy about that.
16th of December.
Yeah.
Not the same year, but the same one of the dates, yeah.
But
16.
you, Barney, didn't you, just to explain, you had a stroke about 9 years ago, didn't you? I mean, you've recovered
It was about 8 years ago, yeah. 8 or 9. I had a stroke. And I'm just coming about now.
Yeah. No,
I'm
you're
able to
virtually
play
there.
again. Yeah, about 97%. Would that be right, John?
Yeah, I remember going in to visit Barney in the Mater private at the time, the Mater Hospital, and they had various little items to exercise the fingers and that, you know, these little rubber squeegee things. But Barney discovered his own perfect therapy. He had somebody bring him in the banjo. So he's playing the banjo every day, and sure, it was like a concert every day. All the nurses used to be flocking into Barney's ward to hear this impromptu session on the banjo.
Well, I wasn't able to play that.
Barney's therapy, you were playing fine. They were all delighted anyway.
But you've never lost your voice, Barney, because
Well, I never sang with the group.
I know, but you were
you
singing
did.
for me earlier, and I'm going to ask you to sing
a
that
little
song.
bit. I was never that because you had great singers in the group. I was the instrumentalist.
But you
And
sing
John,
now, don't you, when you go
I used to
around?
sing a little bit, yeah. I could, a small bit, yeah.
That song, Don't You Love It, I Wish I Had Someone to Love Me. Didn't your grandmother sing that to you?
Has a lullaby, yeah, for a little baby. Out on the Kildare Road.
And you
County
sing that a
Meath.
bit. Listen, on this Sunday morning, I'd like to ask you to sing that now. You have your fiddle there, haven't you, John?
I have my fiddle here, Miriam. Well, I'll give him a little intro, maybe, just to get the pitch.
A bit early, isn't it?
Who cares? Just go for it.
It's in B flat, I think. But sure, you won't know that. The signature will be in...
Give me a beer, I'll flatten it myself.
Yeah, here we go.
Well, I wish I had someone to love me, someone to call me her own, someone to sleep with me nightly. I'm weary of sleeping alone. Me